Let's also welcome the youngest delegate in the room. He's really shouting out his lungs right now, but we will all settle down. So, for this technical session, Pathways to Inclusive and Resilient Job Creation, being co curated in partnership with Work for Progress, supported by Lakaxia Foundation. I hope I've got that right. Without much ado, may I warmly welcome the moderator for this session, Ms. Ranu Bhogal, to please take her place on the stage. May I now invite on stage the esteemed panelists for this session. Please join me in welcoming on stage Ms. Kanika Varma, Lead Green and Inclusive Entrepreneurship and Associate Vice President, Development Alternatives Group. We warmly welcome on stage Mr. Shubhendu Das, Vice President, Access Development Services. And now I welcome Ms. Dipali Sharma, Director, Organizational Effectiveness, ActionAid. A warm welcome to Mr. Pankaj Shukla, CEO, Agri Entrepreneur Growth Foundation. I also welcome Mr. Anuj Srivastava, Chief Functionary and Director, Swami Vivekanand Shiksha Samiti. With that, I now hand over the session to Ms. Ranu Bhogal to please take it forward.
Thank you. Are those lights? Those lights are necessary? It's like blinding me completely. One request, because this is post-lunch parallel session, I request people sitting right at the back to kindly move forward. You can leave whenever you want to. We won't mind. But at least populate these empty seats. It's demotivating to see empty seats right in front of our eyes. Thank you so much. So since this is a 70-minute session, I will not waste time in introducing my esteemed panelists and colleagues. Their bios are there in the booklet that you have got. So please refer to that to know more about them, and you can catch them after the session. The way we have structured the session is that Kanika will make a brief presentation about the Work for Progress program and approach. And then we will have 2 rounds of presentation or conversation with the panelists, 5 minutes each. And then we'll open I'll open the house for some questions. Before I open the panelists, I'll give a brief kind of overview. Yeah, thanks. Kanika, over to you.
Thank you so much, Ranu, for setting a bit of the structure for the day. I'm going to basically kick us off a little bit with what the Work for Progress approach and its way of enabling people to come together and work together, creating a breakthrough in what we believe would be job creation. So just to sort of set a little bit of the context, and this audience actually doesn't really need much of a context, but just as a reminder that we're dealing with the issue of job creation is extremely complex, whether it's the 90% of the economy that sits in informality or a range of unemployment that happens in the country. There is a need for a different way, an alternative way of looking at this challenge. Right now in the country, there are about 25 million people who are unemployed, and it's predicted by 2030 that 65 million will join workforce. So you are looking at a large majority of stakeholders, of individuals who are going to be looking at job creation, which is not only inclusive, as our title suggests, but also resilient. What we're going to need is a shift towards an approach or or an orientation which enables all of these job seekers to become job creators. Because the job creation is not going to come from large businesses who are moving more and more rapidly towards automation, or towards or from government stakeholders. We're going to be needing small businesses, these nano businesses, to actually do that. Herein also lies the challenge. How do you help such small businesses that are sitting in the informality context to create job creation, to at least create 3 jobs per enterprise, so that you can help transition the country towards a robust labor market. This for me is that face of Chanda Shukla, who's not only set up her own multiple businesses, but is also helping other women, particularly women and youth. A lot of emphasis on women and youth, who are the ones who have been most excluded from this support. Sorry. Work for Progress is a global program. It is currently in about 4 countries, started off in India, 2017 to then Peru, Mozambique, and Colombia. We've now had a breakthrough in terms of not only enterprises and jobs being created, and I'll come to this in a little bit, of prototypes or solutions. These are innovations that can be further scaled in different regions and are being done so. Sorry. The breakthrough of the program, and this is going to be more on the nature of what I'm going to be sharing a little bit about. The breakthrough of the program just doesn't come from the fact that they're just a group of people coming together. I think we hear this very often, that we need to move towards collaboration, we need to be working together, but a lot of it is an intent. How do you even create a movement when it's more of the vertical nature of the relationships actually that define development? How do you enable a more horizontal side of these networks that come together? My colleagues will share much more real examples of that, but the community of Work for Progress, now coming from different countries, is looking at learning and innovation to sort of create these multi-stakeholder platforms. And now I'm going to walk you a little bit about what this collective action or innovation is all about. It's driven by what you would call a bottom-up social innovation approach. The need for changing the vertical structures that exist and to create these horizontal networks, we need to have our eyes and ears in the grassroots first. Really deeply listen to communities. Their aspirations are changing very, very rapidly. A woman 20 years ago, what she wanted to do in terms of basic livelihood, wants to move towards more innovative. And I think we don't even understand half of where the aspirations have reached. I recently came across this story where a woman said, I had 17 rupees I was able to save. I took 15 rupees out of that, and I went home and I made pasta for my children. You can make whatever you want out of this statement, but this is the reality of where communities are. So deeply understanding what their needs, aspirations are, and coming more from a solution orientation of strengths that exist, the resources that exist in the community, as opposed to obsessing over problems, because the communities have it within themselves. And it's with this spirit that then the next step is to co-create the solutions or prototype these solutions with the communities, which are more towards the fundamental solutions, prototypes that can actually create change in the communities. And a very strong aspect of this kind of an approach also is to learn. We need to be much more agile. The system that we're operating is moving so fast that waiting for 1 year to look at the solution and say, oh, what has worked, what is not, is too long. So in major breakthroughs, collectively, how do we learn is an essential part of the approach. All in all, if I were to say, the big shift is from that step-by-step kind of an approach where you develop an enterprise package, you mobilize communities, you identify entrepreneurs, you build capacities, to more of these interconnections between, or facilitate the interconnections between these systemic solutions in the form of prototypes, which not only will create changes in the community, but will address the fundamental challenges that exist in the community. What are the cultural barriers that exist where behavior needs to change, enabling women to set up businesses? How the ecosystem that already exists in some form or the other, what are the gaps? How can we address those gaps? How can we unlock the financial resources, for example, to adhere to what the aspirations are? Maybe it's not just about the size of the business that we're looking for. It's not the own account enterprises that we're used to, but those 3 job creating enterprises, the missing middle of the enterprises that need support. And of course, at the higher level, how do you address policy, which is generated through this bottom-up approach? Rapidly moving on, just to give you a sense of how Work for Progress is built, is that you have country level platforms. The country platforms exist of various networks led by different institutions where they have their own different actors working together. So it's literally an ecosystem of ecosystems, and that's how the world is organized, that we're making it much more visible through this. There's of course a whole governance system where you have an external coordinator who connects all of these. Tools and processes are shared much more actively within the networks who are doing different kinds of solutions to come together. And of course, new forms of evaluation. Developmental evaluation is one kind of an evaluation where with the community, as much as you're listening, you're also learning them, enabling them to understand the changes that are happening, and of course, creating a global and a national influence. So just rapidly moving on to the India platform, there are currently 3 active platforms. You have Development Alternatives, you have Alianza and ActionAid, and you have Access, who was our most recent entrant into it. On the map are different regions of where the footprint is. Just to give you a sense of the regions and the partners. On the left side, as you can see, Development Alternatives has the advantage of starting first as a network, has built systemic prototypes in the form of, say, a district entrepreneurship coalition, which will enable stakeholders at the district level to come together and engage. We'll probably hear a little bit more about it. To ActionAid, that is looking at particularly fund solutions and prototypes that can enable livelihood models to move marginalized communities out of poverty. Access, and Access will share a bit more, building on the innovations that have also already been built on the on-farm side, how they are scaling those solutions, working at, from a waste-based enterprises to greenpreneurs who are looking actively at the climate solutions embedded into it. Some of the really sort of quick snapshot of the approach. The ecosystem approach, of course, enables it to build much more resilience and sustainability into the way it's designed. It's not dependent on one person, one solution, but to rapidly move on, looking at cluster of or micro movements of solutions that can create large change. The emphasis on the learning helps you make sure that the knowledge that exists, the tacit knowledge that exists, doesn't get lost. And there's much more active connections. Different ways of looking at scale, whether it's scaling deep, it's scaling out or scaling up. Every form is possible in this kind of thing. And of course, the convergence of resources, skills, and strengths is a major, major advantage of it. On the right side, the diagram basically showcases the focus on which kinds of households, but how every network in that sense is creating its own solutions, but it's actually the tools and processes and the approach that connects each other. It's not a force fit kind of a connection that happens. So I'm going to stop here. Rano, I hope I haven't taken too much time, but this is the wide range of network partners. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And Rano, handing over back to you.
Thanks, Kanika. Thanks, Kanika. So Kanika has given, she's in a capsule, a bit flavor of the approach. there is jargon. When I joined this platform, this network as the external coordinator, it took me some time to absorb this language. And as some of you might be wondering, I also used to question what is new about it. हम लोग भी तो 30-35 साल से PRA करते हैं, कम्युनिटीज़ में जाके समय बिताते हैं, उनको सुनते हैं और फिर हम प्रोग्राम डिज़ाइन करते हैं. But now, having spent about close to a year and a half, I realized that there is a strength in this approach. हम लोग जब काम करते रहे हैं तो PRA प्रोग्राम डिज़ाइन के पहले कर लिया, उसके बाद पैसा आ गया और काम शुरू हो गया. Then there is a mid-term kind of an assessment and end-term assessment. एक MIS system होता है, but prior, in my experience, I have seen that the feedback loop is rarely completed. So, an MIS does capture something, but the people who are actually implementing on ground are cut off from that MIS system. So I think the strength of this approach is that you constantly telling your teams to listen, to complete that feedback loop wherever required, make changes. And I think so Shubhendu will share about how they made some modifications in their program. And that's the strength of the approach, where you're constantly listening, co-creating, modifying whatever model you're working on, and then kind of once you kind of settle that, then you can say, okay, now we scale up. But when you scale up again, when you get to a new set of people, you have to continue with that process of listening, because human beings are different, and we Indians love changing things on our own. I just want to mention a few things I've picked up from the last 2 days in the conference, and some very interesting insights. For instance, a previous session on e-commerce, Shumita Ghosh shared about how from home-based artisans, they made a shift to the Shilp Kendra, where women would come as a group in a village to, do whatever work they were doing in the handicrafts or handlooms. And that ensured some kind of quality control. They also invited designers to co-create new designs that are responding to the changing fashions. And therefore, they're responding to the market. Now, if that co-creation process had not happened, if that exercise of bringing women together in one space had not happened, there would not be much of sharing of experiences and modifying what they are doing and responding to the market. It also, I want to connect with the topic of this year's annual report of livelihood, which is looking at women-led development. And we constantly talk about gender and women. And what does that mean? Please, let's also think in terms of, it's not about just giving a woman an opportunity to start an enterprise. It's also working in the environment that she's working in, what kind of support systems are required. And there's a lot that has been talked in the last 2 days. So I would request you to also listen to the panelists with a larger kind of ecosystem in mind, and larger context in which these entrepreneurs actually work, deal with the social norms of the society, develop their agency and voice, and that's where they kind of find themselves. Somebody used a very interesting term today morning. They lack self-belief, especially women. They don't believe in their own ability to do something like an entrepreneur, real exercise or enterprise. So how do you bring that in? It's not an injection ki de di aur kal se wo entrepreneur ban gaye. So do keep that in mind, because there is so many more things that are required. And the organizations sitting here, they have done that kind of investment with the, so the entrepreneurship, the entrepreneur development is happening by a lot of other things that are at times very invisible. What is visible is loan mil gaya, training mil gayi, machine mil gayi, market link kar diya. But is that the formula that will make a person an entrepreneur? Or there's something much more that needs to be done. It is something I would really request you people all to keep in mind. And now, without taking any more time, I will first invite Anuj to share his experience. So the topic is Pathways to Inclusive and Resilient Job Creation. And I've requested the panelists to first talk about how they have created these pathways in their own contexts. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Ranu. And जो 2 दिन से ये पूरे सेशन चल रहे हैं, हमने जो काफ़ी सेशन हम लोगों ने पार्टिसिपेट किया, एंड जैसे कनिका ने कहा कि जो W4P की बात हम लोग कर रहे हैं, वर्क फॉर प्रोग्रेस की बात कर रहे हैं, हम उसकी ब्यूटी की बात करेंगे हम लोग, क्योंकि जब हम इंक्लूसिव एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप की बात कर रहे हैं एंड जब पूरे W4P की बात करते हैं, तो W4 की ब्यूटी क्या है कि हम अभी तक जितने प्रोग्राम चल रहे हैं, बहुत सारे प्रोग्राम हम लोग जाते हैं, तो एक गांव में 50 कंप्यूटर लगा दिया, एक गांव में 50 एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप को एक ही जगह लगा दिया कि एक काम कर रहे हैं, सिलाई की मशीन चला लिया, कंप्यूटर सिखा रहे हैं, एम्ब्रॉयडरी सिखा रहे हैं, बट मार्केट नहीं है। तो जो W4 की बात करेंगे, W4P की बात करेंगे, तो जो ब्यूटी मीन्स कि वो जो हमारे एग्जिस्टिंग्स है, जो हमारे इंटरप्रेन्योर जो काम कर रहे हैं, ठीक है, एंड नए इंटरप्रेन्योर जो काम को करना चाहते हैं, हमारा कोई थोपना नहीं उनके ऊपर कि हम इस काम को करेंगे आपके साथ में। FGD आफ्टर FGD वो जिस काम को करना चाह रहे हैं, हम उनको, अगर कोई मशीन चला रहा है, कोई आटा मशीन चला रहा है, कोई और भी काम कर रहा है, तो उसकी ब्यूटी क्या है, उसको ज़रूरत क्या है, क्योंकि अगर हम उस काम को बंद करके उसको किसी और काम में लगाना चाह रहे हैं, कि अब वो आटा मशीन चला रहा है, उसको उठा के हमने खाद बनवाना शुरू कर दिया, तो पूरी ब्यूटी खत्म हो गई, उसका जो अंदर का जो एक इंटरप्रेन्योर था वो मर गया। तो इस प्रोजेक्ट में हम उनको ऐसे ही हम सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं कि उनकी क्या ज़रूरत है। पूरे कोरोना के बाद जितने लोग वहाँ पे आए, मिर्ज़ापुर की बात करें या आसपास सराउंडिंग जहाँ हम लोग काम कर रहे हैं, तो उनको वो एकदम परेशान कि हम कैसे काम करेंगे यहाँ पर, क्योंकि हम बॉम्बे से आए हैं, हम दिल्ली से आ रहे हैं। तो हम इस प्रोजेक्ट में सर्वे के दौरान उन्होंने जो काम सीखा था, उन्होंने जो काम करना चाहे, हमने उनको सपोर्ट किया। 10,000 के लगभग आसपास उन्होंने सपोर्ट किया इन लोगों को। तो अगर हम इसमें इस तरह से बात कर रहे हैं इसमें कि ये ब्यूटी उसकी वही है। एंड इसके बाद क्या कर रहे हैं कि हम बहुत सारे उसमें देखते हैं कि हम लोग एक तरह से काम करते हैं। किसी ने कंप्यूटर सिखा दिया एंड कंप्यूटर के बाद क्या किया, उसका कुछ नहीं हुआ। तो जो अप्रोचेज हम लोग लेके चल रहे हैं इसमें कि हम उसमें टेक्नोलॉजी एंड फिनांस एंड मार्केटिंग एंड कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग, इसको बोलते हैं हम लोग TFMC फार्मूला। तो अगर किसी को ज़रूरत है कि टेक्नोलॉजी ज़रूरत है, यह सारी चीज़ ज़रूरत है, एग्जिस्टिंग एंड न्यू। तो अगर किसी को लगता है कि पुराने लोग काम कर रहे हैं, उनके काम में कहीं कमी है, तो टेक्नोलॉजी की ज़रूरत है उनको, अदरवाइज फाइनेंस की ज़रूरत है, या मार्केट नहीं हो पा रहा है, या कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग की ज़रूरत है। लाइक अगर हम क्वालिटी कंट्रोल की बात कर रहे हैं, उनको लगता है कि सारा काम कर रहे हैं, क्वालिटी कंट्रोल नहीं है, सारा काम कर रहे हैं लेकिन थोड़े पैसे के लिए काम रुका हुआ है, सारा काम कर रहे हैं टेक्नोलॉजी की वजह से काम रुका हुआ है, तो हम उनको वो सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं। तो अगर कोई बंदा, जैसे अभी हम लोग बात कर रहे थे, कोई अभी साथ में हम लोग बात कर रहे थे कि एक फली दिया उसको, मान ली हम लोग मिर्च की खेती करा रहे हैं, अब मिर्च की खेती करा दिया, उसको बीज दे दिया, फाइनेंस भी दे दिया, लेकिन उस मिर्च को कब तोड़ना है हमको, अगर नहीं तोड़ा समय से तो क्या किया, वो लाखों का मिर्चा खराब हो गया हमारा। तो हम जो ये TFMC फार्मूला लेके चल रहे हैं, एंड स्पेशली जो वुमेन लेड प्रोग्राम चल रहे हैं, हजारों महिलाएं उसमें, तो महिलाओं को कैसे निकाल रहे हैं हम, उनको सोशली इम्पावर कैसे कर रहे हैं, उनको पॉलिटिकली इम्पावर कैसे कर रहे हैं, कि हम वो समूह में आ रहे हैं, समूह में उनको प्रोजेक्ट चल रहा है एंड कोई इंटरप्राइज चला रहे हैं, लेकिन समूह से क्या उनको पैसा मिल गया, टेक्नोलॉजी नहीं मिल गया, तो हम उनको सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं, उनको कि टेक्नोलॉजी भी दे रहे हैं, फिनांस भी दे रहे हैं, एंड कैपेसिटी बिल्डिंग भी दे रहे हैं, ताकि वो सस्टेन कर सके। अगर हम बात करते हैं ना उसकी कि वो हम कि किस तरह से हम उनको सस्टेन इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ कैसे करेंगे एंड सस्टेनेबिलिटी कैसे देंगे उनको। तो जब चारों चीज़ उनके पास में है, मार्केटिंग में स्पेशली मार्केटिंग की बात होती है, तो जब सब कुछ उनके पास है तो महिलाएं आती हैं, यूथ आ रहे हैं एंड काम स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं एंड वो वापस नहीं जा रहे हैं। और कोई प्रॉब्लम है तो वो अगले फेज में फिर बात करेंगे, अभी एक सेशन और हम लोगों का है कि वापस क्यों नहीं जा रहे हैं वो। लेकिन इस फार्मूला को लेके चल के हम सस्टेन कर रहे हैं अपने सारे यूथ एंड जो हमारी वुमेन है, वुमेन एंड एंटरप्राइज है, उनको हम सस्टेन कर पा रहे हैं।
धन्यवाद अनुज। I will now invite Dipali to share actually its experience.
This one? No? Yeah. Okay, thank you, Ranu. And before that, thank you, Kanika, for giving an overview of the entire Work for Progress platform in India. So I'll also share my experience as part of one of the platform members under the Work for Progress. And as the key terms, I just note the key terms for this session, which is one is the inclusive livelihoods, and of course quality is also mentioned there, as well as the resilient, sustainable livelihoods. So I would like to go a little bit into the basics, because the basics, which are the fundamentals, are very important when we are looking at anything long term and sustainable. And especially from the Indian point of view. So when we are talking of jobs or livelihoods or creating employment or a business, so what are the basic things which are required? What are the basic things which are minimum when we are talking from the inclusivity point of view? So for starting any business or enterprise, I think the first and the foremost important thing is having some ownership over some resources. Huh? What are those means of production? Na? तो मतलब ownership of assets, resources, property, anything basic to start your enterprise. That is the most important. And when I say I will speak on the basics and fundamentals, because this is where the a very big question of who owns these resources, and because we are talking of the most vulnerable and marginalized communities, because inclusion we have to ensure of those who have been left behind. And here the historical perspectives from the Indian context also becomes important. In a country like some communities were not even allowed to have ownership of assets and property. And within that, if we look at the women of those communities, so this is the basic starting point. So how do we create an ecosystem? We are talking of the entire ecosystem. So how do we create an ecosystem where we can create ownership of this resources for starting any job or enterprise or livelihood initiative, and then enabling access to that resource or property, because both are very important. Even if you do not have an ownership, you need to have access to those resources, productive resources. So why this fundamental is very important, because and especially ActionAid India, as part of this Work for Progress platform, has been focusing on agro-based. So natural farming, agro-based farming is what we have been focusing on. And here even if I just share a little bit of data, global data as well as from the Indian context, what is the women's ownership over land in India? So when women are starting any agro-based enterprise, natural farming-based enterprise, that is where the starting point for us. And I mean, I can share a lot of data. हमारा NCAR का भी है, National Applied Economic Research का data है कि women contribute maximum in terms of even farm labor or farm work, but their ownership over resource and land. And this I'm also talking from the experience of the work that we have done under Work for Progress, because when we are starting this enterprise or when we are registering this farmers producer organization, so in our case, all the board members are women board members. To even register that, there was a need for having some asset in their name. So unless you can show that kind of guarantee, they were not able to register. So for us, changing those equations, inclusion ki, when we talk of inclusion, creating those kind of ecosystem becomes very important. Second is what I spoke about, the accessibility to those resources. So and resource here is, I just gave example of land, but then the resources are quite wide ranging. So today we are also talking of a lot of technology. So when they are into business or an enterprise, what kind of access? So again, going back to what is the women's access to those technology and skills to use those technology. So this is again very important thing which we create as part of the ecosystem, as part of the Work for Progress platform. Then we can look into a whole range of others. So what are the services available? How do women have access to that? In the morning, I was listening to that MSME session. So even if you, I mean, it was very good to listen that these new schemes, provisions have been created, affirmative action basically for inclusion. You help women enterprises, entrepreneurs to register for GST and all, because otherwise on themselves they will not be able to do that. So how do you again create that ecosystem? Third is, because I'm just talking of the fundamentals. Third, very important here, because we are talking of resilient. So again, when we are looking at the agro-based livelihoods, again, the whole question of climate and all, with the erratic, extreme weather conditions, erratic rainfalls, drought on one hand, then you have incessant rains on the other hand, the whole, its implication on the crop productivity, on the agriculture, because agriculture is one of the most important going forward in terms of food production. And what is the quality of food in that? Because the kind of inputs that we are using into agriculture. So these are some of the aspects that we are looking at, because I mean, we have data from the Asian point of view. IPCC का data है, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, कि by 2050 or by 2080, even in India and in the Asia, because of this climate crisis, the food production is going to be impacted by almost 10%, and in Indian context, it's going to be impacted by 2080 almost by 20% because of this adverse climate crisis that we see. So the jobs that we are creating and the livelihood initiatives that we are creating, it helps address this entire ecosystem, the systems approach, what we call, and also hitting at the very roots of these structural inequalities, because these are the communities where we have to bring them and include them in the entire mainstream, what we call as. That is where, I mean, this is what our approach is, to create well-being of the overall world and the societies. We have to really work at this level. So I think in the second round I can come to more, but for now.
Thank you. And people who attended the early morning session, 9:30, Vijay Mahajan was moderating. He made a very interesting point in the conclusion, end of the session. One was that investing in natural resources is something very, very important. That will not only regenerate the resources, it will create employment opportunities. It's a model that we need to follow. We seem to be kind of forgetting that this is where, and of course the second was education and health. Both offer great opportunity for creating jobs in especially in rural India. And in the session moderated by Shiv Kumar, I picked up another very interesting statement that in Karnataka the farmer told him कि हम अमृत से खेती करते थे और फिर हमको आपने आके poison डालना सिखाया, which is chemical fertilizers, and now we are being told कि go back to अमृत का खेती because we are eating poisonous food. So, you know, the cycle seems to be kind of getting completed, so to say. Now we are all talking about natural farming, and that's a great one to now come to you, Shubhendu, because I think this whole thing of moving to the greenpreneur model and, you know, vermicomposting and other models, which of course ActionAid also has done and you picked up from there. So please, over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Ranu. So I would also like to first share how the work for progress model is different from many other such development practice models that we implement. Even we implement many models. So the most important difference is the bottoms up approach. So as development practitioners at head office, many times when we plan some program, there we write something, we write an approach, we write a methodology, and ultimately if we start the program, then there is not much change in that, whatever challenges comes. However, in this case, listening. So the program says, don't plan everything. You have a strategic roadmap. First listen to the community for which you are planning to work. I won't go much long, but just for example, we had to adopt 5 natural farming principles, practices from the ActionAid model. That was one of our plan. However, when we went to the field, we learned from them, we listened from the existing program area, that is sharing of thoughts. We came back to the drawing board again. We again went to the community. There we discussed with them. These are the 5 solutions we are proposing. उसमें से एक लगा उनको हॉर्टिकल्चर. देयर वाज गोट रेयरिंग, वर्मी कंपोस्टिंग, देयर वर डिफरेंट मॉडल्स. एक था हॉर्टिकल्चर. बोले सर इसमें से तो 2 साल में इनकम आएगा, 3 साल में इनकम आएगा. सो आप ऐसा कुछ हमारे लिए देखिए. अच्छा, दूसरा एक ये था और उनका कि सर आप कुछ भी मत करो, पानी ले आओ बस. सो that was we knew that there's a challenge, but when we have never listened to the community. हमने कभी इतना डिटेल में उनसे सोचा नहीं था, but when this listening principle and practice was imbibed within our hearts, जब हम कम्युनिटी के पास में सुनने गए तो सब कुछ भी मत करो, पानी लेके आ जाओ. So what is the alternative? हमने तो सोचा नहीं था प्लान में कैसे करेंगे. So then comes the greenpreneur model. There also a change in the concept wherein in a normal program, what we call local resource persons or community resource persons. Program khatam, सब छुट्टी घर चले जाते हैं, एंड देन वी टॉक अबाउट सस्टेनेबिलिटी. To bring into action, what we started talking about as a model, of course, that was part of the program. So greenpreneurs, what is their role? Maybe water was not part of the program. However, what are such products and services that can be promoted to the farmers with a cost? They earn something, the farmer reduces the cost of cultivation, the farmer needs less water, and then associated with that, there are many other such support services. That's how we have seen that within a very short period of time, there is a great interest among the farmers of the program. Otherwise, it takes at least more than 1 year for a program to get imbibed in as a concept with the farmers' fraternity. But within 6 months, there is a lot of interest because we have listened to them. हमने अपने मर्जी से नहीं बनाया, हमने उनसे सुना, उनसे सुनने के बाद में उनके challenges को we again came back to the drawing board and then only we started. So now there are lots of natural farming practices which we have adopted from the existing partners and we are scaling it up.
Thanks, Shubhendu, for sharing that. And आपको ये नहीं लगना चाहिए कि हम सिर्फ फार्म सेक्टर पे ही काम करते हैं. डेवलपमेंट ऑल्टरनेटिव्स का बहुत सारा काम, क्योंकि जब इसलिए मैं कह रही हूँ कि इकोसिस्टम को समझ के, लैंडस्केप को समझ के काम की ज़रूरत है. वहाँ पे सिर्फ खेती नहीं हो रही है. और एक सेशन में आई थिंक अरुण मेहरा सेड दिस इन द मॉर्निंग कि नो, आई थिंक द लेडी, द आईएएस ऑफिसर मिशन डायरेक्टर फ्रॉम तमिलनाडु, शी सेड दिस फार्म, नॉन फार्म और ये सब जो डिविजन्स हैं ये हमारे हैं. When you go to the community, they don't see their lives as farm or off farm. You know, उनको तो वो साड़ी भी खरीदना है. और मैंने अब पहले एक ज़माने में स्वशक्ति प्रोजेक्ट था वर्ल्ड बैंक का, मैं इवेल्युएट कर रही थी and I'd gone to Haryana and I was shocked that one of the interventions that SSG women were promoting was beauty parlors. And I remember my colleague Ved Arya of Srijan and I told him कि गाँव में beauty parlors की क्या ज़रूरत है. But today, when I went to the DA program area in Mirzapur and in Orchha, I mean, there's successful beauty parlors, there's bridal makeup happening, there's so much happening, there's a demand. So, respond, and that's entrepreneurship. So beauty parlors, sari shops, ready-made garment stores, चश्मे की दुकान. मैं कभी नहीं सोच सकती थी कि गांव में कोई चश्मे की दुकान खोलना चाहेगा. So there's one entrepreneur, young girl, I mean, she said कि मैं तो एक चश्मे की दुकान खोलूँगी और उसमें वो आई टेस्टिंग करती है, एक डॉक्टर को बुलाती है हफ्ते में एक बार, वो आके जांच भी करते हैं. तो ये है entrepreneurship. So, looking at the needs of that community, talking to people, and the ideas are coming from people. It is not the DA or Access or who's going with ideas with people. I mean, these ideas are actually coming from people in the community. All then, आपने जो term use किया वो TFMC, Technical Finance Market and Capacity Building. You identify कि उनको किसकी ज़रूरत है. शायद चारों चीज़ें सबको नहीं चाहिए. किसी को कैपिटल चाहिए होगा, किसी को थोड़ा सा एक्सपोजर चाहिए, कैपेसिटी उसकी बिल्ड कर दें, इस तरह से आइडेंटिफाई करके रियली प्लगिंग इन द गैप दैट एग्जिस्ट्स in triggering that entrepreneurship journey for that particular person. So that's the strength of the program. So I just wanted to make that clarification. Otherwise you may think that हम सिर्फ खेती और इसी पे काम कर रहे हैं. But over that I'll take you back to खेती because Pankaj represents, and he's not from the Work for Progress program, but he represents an interesting organization that promotes agri-entrepreneurship. And I will invite you to now share your experience, Pankaj, with the audience.
Thanks,
Thank you.
So again, I'll take you back to agri. Sorry for that. And actually what I can say, how we can make job seekers as job creators. So that I think we have started that concept of agri-entrepreneurship in 2014. And 2014 is when we started our first cohort of about 29 agri-entrepreneurs that we have taken. We have trained them. And we have gone with a preconceived notion कि आपके साथ ये करना है. And we failed miserably. All 29 dropped out because we went there with our own solution without understanding the problem. Then again we learned on that, and that took us time. Then we changed the model, and now the way we behave and the way we operate It's like we are actively present in 13 states, but in some 17 states, we have basically trained and incubated about 22,000 agri-entrepreneur, and successfully 90% of them, they are providing services to about 2.3 million farmers, and that to small and marginal farmers that they are doing. And the success is only because now we are not going with any preconceived notion कि हमको ये करना है. Like what Work for Progress is doing, what Shubhendu has told, or what Anuji has told. First, we go in the market with complete open mind. What are the challenges? What are the pain points? Because if you go to address the pain point, and if a person is there to address those pain points, then we can ensure we can make those entrepreneur as a successful entrepreneur. If input is not the challenge, and if an entrepreneur goes and open an input shop offshore, that he is going to fail, because he can't compete with another agri-input dealer which is there in that particular vicinity for last 25 years, doing business of some crores. And I can't expect these entrepreneurs, and the entrepreneurs that we take are the rural youth from a very low families. Those, I think, they have to think twice to invest 20,000 or 30,000 rupees. So उनको अगर मैं जाके बोलूँगा वहाँ इनपुट की दुकान खोल लो, तो वो फेल होने वाले हैं. तो what we do in our system, like what you are doing in Work for Progress, we also follow the same approach. Go and understand what are the pain points and how through those pain points can be addressed. And there is a note to do that, and that we call as an entrepreneur. And what Shubhendu has told about the sustainability of the program. Another beauty of the program, we don't import entrepreneur into the locality or the geography. We basically select the rural youth of that particular location, that to an unemployed rural youth, and who or she is not very ambitious, because there are limitations with the program. You can't expect a micro entrepreneur, a small entrepreneur, within 6 months he is going to earn 50,000 rupees in a month. So while selection we see he is not very ambitious. Criteria are very simple, at least 10th pass from that particular village, having a smartphone. This is the only criteria that we look. Where we'll find the candidates, we train them, and after training again we don't leave them, because it's very tough, or it's basically it's not fair on their part. We just give them the training and ask them to start your entrepreneur journey, because there are a number of challenges they might face. Then we have a system of mentors in place who basically provide the hand-holding supports. So there is a complete, I think I'm fully aligned what you are telling and what we are doing. It's basically the same thing. Understand the pain points, try to address those pain points, and once that entrepreneur is established, like if there is a rural youth of that particular area, he is not going to cheat to those particular villages from with whom he is staying for long. Because उसको पता है कि उसके बाप दादा सब वहीं रह रहे थे, अगर मैं कुछ गलत करूंगा तो this villagers will come to me at any time. So that is the way we do, address the pain points. If we work with that particular concept, go understand the problem and try to address those problems by creating an entrepreneur, then definitely the success can be achieved.
Thank you, Pankaj. So this next round is really to give you a flavor of the experiences of the organization. So Anuj, over to you. आप बताइए what kind of experiences you've had. Some concrete example.
Again, thank you. And हमने बात पूरी करनी है, तो हमने TFM अब ये कहेंगे कि 10,000 लोगों के साथ हम TFMC पूरा कैसे करते हैं, ये थोड़ा समझना बहुत ज़रूरी है. कि हम लोगों ने जो एक्सपेरिमेंट किया वहाँ कोलिजन ऑफ गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसर्स, तो गवर्नमेंट ऑफिसर्स कोलिजन बनाना आप समझिए कितना टफ है. बट इस सक्सेस रेट को देखते हुए एंड वोमेन लेड इंटरप्राइज देखते हुए, महिलाओं की संख्या देखते हुए, आप समझिए कि हम लोग इस महीने में 45वां कोलिजन किया है मिर्ज़ापुर में. एंड सक्सेस रेट ये है कि हमारे ऐसा कोई डिपार्टमेंट नहीं है 45 डिपार्टमेंट में जो नहीं आता है, चाहे वो हॉर्टिकल्चर हो, चाहे वो एग्रीकल्चर हो. देयर कीन इंटरेस्ट कि भाई तुम्हारा कोलिजन कब होने वाला है, जरा मुझे बताइएगा, क्योंकि हमारे पास इतनी स्कीम है देने के लिए. इन फ्यूचर हम शायद W4P जो मॉडल हमारा है, हम लगभग 2 लाख लोगों के साथ काम करने जा रहे हैं पूरी इंडिया में अलग अलग जगह पे. तो ये जो कोलिजन हमने बनाया ना, ये कोलिजन ही हमको ये TFMC सपोर्ट करता है. RCT फॉर ट्रेनिंग, बैंकर्स फॉर फिनांस एंड अदर, जैसे हॉर्टिकल्चर, खादी डिपार्टमेंट एंड एग्रीकल्चर फॉर स्कीम्स. ये सारे जो डिपार्टमेंट है ये हमारे, मतलब ये डिपार्टमेंट 45 डिपार्टमेंट अलग अलग है, नॉट हम उसको गिनती नहीं कर सकते हैं. एंड हम एक एग्जांपल बताते हैं, क्योंकि अभी बहुत सारी बातें हालांकि करने को है, और हो सकता है कि काम करना एक अलग होता है, बात करने में थोड़ा वो समराइज हो जाता है। एंड कभी आइए हमारे मिर्ज़ापुर में तो दिखाएं W4P कैसे काम कर रहा है। एंड तो एक एग्जांपल बताते हैं कि हम जैसा हमने पहले भी बात किया था कि 100 तालाब है मिर्ज़ापुर में, 100 तालाब जो सूख गए, वो सर्वे में निकल के आई क्यों सूख गया। तो हुआ कि किसी ने मछली दे दिया हमको, फिश डिपार्टमेंट ने, बट हमको बाकी के समझ नहीं आया कि क्या करेंगे, क्योंकि कुछ भी प्रोजेक्ट चलाना एंड कुछ भी इंटरप्राइज लगाना वो बहुत टफ है। कि टेक्नोलॉजी दे दिया, उसके बाद क्या किया, तो अब वो सर्वे में निकल करके आया, तो ये हुआ कि मछली दे दिया, उसके बाद नहीं बताया। ठीक है, तो उन 100 लोगों को हम लोगों ने गैदर किया, W4P का एक पार्ट है वो, एंड फिर उनको अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट से उनको किया कि फिशरी से अलग से किया उन्होंने, बैंकर से अलग किया, एंड जहाँ से उनको लगता है कि ये दवा देना है उनको टाइम टाइम कौन सी दवा देनी है, कौन सी मछली वहाँ के वातावरण में सूट करती है और कब करना चाहिए। अब पता है जाड़े में हमने मछली डाल दिया तो मछली तो मर गई या डेवलप नहीं हुआ। तो हमको ये सारे डिपार्टमेंट जो TFMC हम करते हैं, इससे हमारी सक्सेस रेट ये है, आज के समय में हमारे पास 100 के 100 वो जो तालाब है वो सक्सेस हैं। ठीक है, तो ये हमारा मॉडल है, W4P का सक्सेस मॉडल है। और उसमें मुझे लगता है कि 60% वुमेन लेड वो इंटरप्राइज है, क्योंकि आदमी तो जा रहा है बाहर, वो एक्सिलरी का काम कर रहा है, ले जा रहा है, फिश बाहर बेच रहा है, बट वो महिलाएं उसको काम कर रही है। थैंक यू।
बहुत बढ़िया। तो जो अनुज जी आप बता रहे थे, तो देर इज दिस डिस्ट्रिक्ट एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप कोएलिशन, दैट्स एक्चुअली वी कॉल इट अ सिस्टमिक प्रोटोटाइप दैट कनिका वाज रेफरिंग टू इन हर प्रेजेंटेशन। एंड दिस कोएलिशन इज, जिसको हम पहले हम लोग बात करते हैं स्टेक होल्डर कंसल्टेशन, सो दिस इज लाइक अ कोएलिशन वेर यू इन्वाइट मल्टीपल स्टेक होल्डर्स, अलग अलग डिपार्टमेंट्स के लोग, प्राइवेट सेक्टर के लोग भी, जो मार्केटिंग, जैसे आप मसाले का काम कर रहे हैं तो आपको मसाला मार्केटिंग करना है, या जो भी प्रोड्यूस है एग्री प्रोड्यूस वगैरह, तो उनको भी इनवाइट करते हैं, हर प्रकार के लोगों को इनवाइट करके, एंड देन हैव अ कॉन्वर्सेशन, एंड दीज आर वेरी वेरी सक्सेसफुल इवेंट्स. I have myself attended 2 such meetings, and it's quite interesting because we always talk about convergence, we talk about synergies, and this is the space where you can see convergence and synergies happening. So it's been a successful kind of systemic prototype in work for progress terminology. I'll now invite Dipali to share your experience, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Ranu. So, taking on from what I shared earlier with our systems-based approach and what we also call as the theory of change, to address, make it inclusive and sustainable job creations, and thereafter through a process of listening and co-creation with the communities. We came up with several ideas. I mean, along with the communities, they came up with several ideas, and these are both farm-based, non-farm-based different initiatives. So we started with also forming of collectives, smaller collectives, groups of women, because this entire work is all with 100% women. And also, I think, except 2 or 3%, these are all women from the scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward communities. So this is the most marginalized sections that ever works with under the Work for Progress work. And so the 7 initiatives that came up as a process of listening and co-creation are, one is we've started what is called the multi-layer farming. So multi-layer farming may you can take up grow 2-3 crops at the same time, because they are multi-level. So on the ground level there's one, then the second level, and the higher ones which are creeper kind of plants which can grow and you take another third crop. So that's one. Then horticulture is the other one that we have started. Then some of the and these were women who own smaller pieces of land, or their families owned some smaller pieces of land. And then the other collectives were formed of women who were interested in taking up goat rearing or poultry rearing. So those were the other 2. And kitchen garden was across, many women also took up kitchen garden. The 6th initiative was around this producing natural fertilizers, because we also want, when we are talking of natural farming. So we wanted to really encourage locally produced, locally used material and all. And how do we make fertilizer, pesticides, all those. So that was all organic, natural production. So we started with a smaller number of groups, about 500 women. And over a period, in the second year, they have also registered a big farmers producer company, organization. And all these collectives, members of these collectives are now part of that farm FPO, which they have registered. And so they are procuring the material from all these different collectives. So individual women are part of it, but they are collecting material from these different smaller enterprises. And they have now opened up their marketing outlets. So in terms of job creations, so it started with 1,000 members. Today we have 5,000 members under the FPO and 100 outlets. So we started with just in the 3 districts, 1 outlet each, but today we have about 100 outlets. And they are hiring women only in this marketing outlets. So the other important work which we are doing is, because as I spoke about skill building, because there's a lot of opportunities in the e-commerce. So how do you market your product in the various other online kind of platforms, which is where these women are now being trained and they are planning to take up. And they have a stall here outside. Maybe you can just meet some of the members there. So Manji, I'm not sure whether she is there. She is one of the board members here. तो अगर अब आप हैं तो बता दीजिए. वो board member है FPO की, बसंत FPO जो stall पे हैं. Okay. So yeah, I think these are some of the initiatives that we have been supporting.
Thanks, Deepali. And recently, early December, I was traveling to the Access program area in Jaipur and Dausa districts, and multi-layer farming. I was completely floored by the adoption of that model. Investment from project was 3,900 rupees for wire and poles, and in a 20 by 20 meter plot, this farmer had raised 3 crops, dhania, palak and bottle gourd, and it was planted in July, and by the time I visited, which was first week of December, the family had already earned 70,000 rupees from that 20 by 20 meter patch. And then I asked them that अब तो project से नहीं मिलने वाला कुछ, but वो टमाटर लगाया था, and they said कि अब we have learnt it, अब हम इसको अपने आप कर लेंगे. Because 3,900 is not a big, the rest is the labor, seed of course in 3,900. So, like it's just and we talk of pilots and demonstration, but to see it live and how farmers themselves, another farmer was innovating. The ADS team had not invested beyond that, and he has already planned for the next crop and planted tomato for winters in that Machan Kheti. And he was telling them, this is what I have done. They had not asked him to do it, but the idea has clicked to him. So I think that's also entrepreneurship, isn't it? Being innovative and taking things forward on their own, and then others can learn. Med pe genda laga diya, because there is a demand for, marigold flowers in the temples. And I think yesterday in one session, somebody, this person from ONDC, she was saying, Namrata, that we don't realize how temples actually have a huge economic implication in the area. So if there is a temple, there's going to be demand for, flowers. So how things, and sitting maybe in our own offices, we may not even plan these kind of enterprises, but it comes from the communities themselves. Sorry, I don't want to cut into your time, but I thought aapka hi example maine share kiya. Yes. Over to you.
So thank you so much. Actually taking a lead from that example, wherein that 3,900 rupees of support, that could have been even 10,000 rupees, even 15,000 rupees, even 20,000 rupees. So because of the listening process, otherwise what happens generally in a program like this, we keep a budget, say 20,000 rupees support to the farmer. Whatever the farmer needs, we give as a support. However, when we assess the capacity of the farmer through the listening process, we understood that बाकी सब काम तो कर ही लेगा. Seed लेके आता है, हम नहीं बोलेंगे तो भी लेके आएगा. Then what is the difference between our program and the normal program? So what we did, because farmers were not following the Machan model, कोई कर भी रहा तो scientifically कर नहीं रहा था. So only the bamboo structure and part of the seeds we invested, rest we just invested in training and capacity building of that farmer. As a result, in every village that we are working, now farmers are interested to adopt this model. Another innovation, so we are talking about also innovation within the program. So we have a case of district entrepreneurship coalition in case of our partner DA network. Maybe it would be too early for us to create such a coalition. However, what we were able to innovate and create is a kind of a ecosystem coalition, wherein buyers like Zepto, Blinkit, they were brought in. So seeing this Loki, they started saying this is good quality Loki because good practice and package and practices were followed. Companies like iCart, Hydrogel, which are completely new products, technology, which are saving water, those were introduced. Products which help the seeds to germinate even if without water, because water is also another challenge in that area. So there are many such examples now created, wherein taking the listening approach, then co-creating, innovating, and then taking it to larger numbers with a business only attitude. So whatever, if we are spending 1 rupee in demonstration, if that is resulting in 100 rupees of output, and how we are linking, the greenpreneurs are supporting the farmers who are producing vermicompost. You will find goat manure, goat milk soap. So these were never thought of in the initial part of the program. However, these products came as a spontaneous process, wherein vermi was now you will be seeing in packets, packaging 250 rupees a bottle. So that is the value addition that is possible. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Pankaj.
Yeah, thanks, sir. Yeah, so I'll take Marigold. Hope I'm audible. Yeah, so I'll take example of Marigold. There are multiple examples. I'll share a simple example of Jharkhand, I think, where we were. So usually what usually happens in Jharkhand, they'll take this marigold cutting from Bengal. They will get it from Bengal, and the farmers, they will take it and they will have to make upfront payment on basis of thousands. Ki 2,000 rupees ka, matlab 2,000 rupees ki 1,000, you will get the cuttings and all. And all the mortality that happens in the transit, that is on farmer's head. Piech mein agar kuch mar gaya, to that is farmer's responsibility. How this entrepreneur, they have changed the picture. They have started their own marigold cultivation. They have started the cutting. Another thing, when the farmers, they usually sell the flowers, and they sell the flowers on a kg basis. So they sell the flower for 30 rupees, 40 rupees or 50 rupees kg. So what again that agri entrepreneur that we created on that particular location has done the value addition. They said, why don't you sell garlands? Why you are selling the flowers? If you sell it in the form of garlands, then it will fetch you more price. What you are selling in kgs, you will be selling in meters. So उनका जो profitability था या जो income level था, that has increased twice or thrice. So that is one example how an entrepreneur has changed the complete dynamics of that area. अब वहीं पे cutting लेके they grow the cuttings. Mortality का there is no point, because whatever they are paying, they are getting that number of cuttings from them. So that is one example. There are multiple examples. Another thing which I want to add on this micro entrepreneurship, that what we are discussing in the rural areas and all, is basically we don't just see it with the lens if a person, I think if we are making him employable and he is going in an urban area getting a job for 15,000 rupees, so it's not basically his earning is 15,000. Because if he's going in the urban area, if he's staying there, then his expenses is about 5 or 7,000 rupees. वो एक कमरा लेगा, खाएगा, तो ultimately what he is earning is not more than 8 or 9,000 rupees. Whereas an entrepreneur, if or that person stays in his particular village and start his journey, whatever he is earning, even if he is earning 5,000 or 6,000 rupees, that is his incremental income. If suppose he is earning whatever is the family income, that is the incremental income, that is he is adding to his family income. Another thing, he is not on tensions. I think the person in the city, वो सुबह शाम परेशान है कि मेरे घर में क्या हो रहा है. फोन इज द ओनली वे ऑफ कॉन्टेक्ट. बच्चा बीमार है, कौन हॉस्पिटल लेके जा रहा है, इज क्लूलेस. Whereas if you are there in your particular village, then these are the another added benefits that, and again we are increasing the village economy. If a entrepreneur is in that area providing all those services, he is adding to the village economy. So with all these things, we also see what are the social benefits he is bringing. And what we have seen, I think even this micro entrepreneur, they can do wonders by staying in the village, not going to the cities and all.
That's a very, very important point about you said we don't import them from outside, but develop them from within so that they are there to provide services. I'll request Kanika. Kanika has been associated with the program right from the beginning when Work for Progress came to India. So if you think we have missed anything in this panel that you would like to add, and then we'll open it to the house for questions. Yeah.
Thank you, Rano. I'll keep it a bit more generic to now the livelihoods and entrepreneurship space, and maybe share an example of how we've sort of created that breakthrough. I think one of the things that we have to recognize is that there are different personas of entrepreneurs. That one standard fit all will not really work, and I think it's something we have to think about. For example, a young woman who wants to set up a business is a very different need than a woman who's connected to a cluster level federation. So how we're creating an ecosystem that works in different ways, how finance can get customized, I think it's something that we have to sort of think about, and maybe we'll address that in the dialogue. I think the second thing that the program looks very, very closely at is technology. How do you digitize the processes or tools? So one of the things we've done is we run this competition called Kaun Banega Business Leader, and it's a fairly successful program on the ground which helps people internalize that they can also be an entrepreneur. And it's interesting that we realized that it had its limits in terms of last mile delivery. But we were also conscious that we can't do everything ourselves. So that's the beauty of working in a network approach, that one of our co-partners, Gramvani, who has the strengths of digital technology, convert it into an IVRS-based system. And sort of working together, now we have created this whole digital ecosystem. So, how strengths of each actors get complemented, and the facilitation that's required to do that is important. The third aspect, I think it's something to consider, is also that strengths and resources exist already. You talked about FPOs, there's the whole cluster level federations, women's institutions, but is it just going to be about helping them set up businesses? The Work for Progress approach enables you to think a little bit differently. That platform already exists. How do you enable that to be part of the ecosystem? That's the question we have to ask ourselves. So what we're now doing with co-funding coming in from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation is to enable them to run centers that are providing services to women.
Thanks, Kanika. You reminded me of another. I just want to share that because it gives you a flavor of the kind of work. So I was visiting TRI, who's a partner with DA in the last phase of the program in Bahraich. And the moment people hear कि लोन मिल सकता है तो सबको लोन चाहिए, बहुत सारे लोगों की अर्जी आ जाती है. तो TRI came up with this idea of a loan committee. And people actually had to come and pitch their idea in front of this committee and convince the committee कि ये मुझे लोन इतना क्यों चाहिए. And then there would be a negotiation, and then of course a lot of them would be sifted out. And they were telling me that when they do these loan committee meetings where people have to make their pitch, लोग सुबह से लाइन लगा के वो बहराइच के गाँव में, मतलब वो उनका जहाँ ऑफिस था बहराइच में, 70-80 लोग, people were in a line to go and pitch their case, so to say, in front of this loan committee. And the loan committee would analyze the case, फिर उसमें से वो छांटते थे, then they would work out the details of a loan amount that was worked out, and then only the loan was sanctioned. And that's how they also reduce bad loans, which is one big problem in many of our interventions. So I thought that was another very interesting innovation TRI did in their program area. I think all of us have spoken enough. We have 10 minutes. So the house is open for questions, maybe 5-6 questions. Keep it brief. And let us know who you want to answer that question, and we can take it. Yeah, over to you all. Thank you. First one. Yes, I can see some stirring there. हाँ, mic दे दीजिए. It's not working. Can we have the lights in the hall, please?
So anybody can answer, but I'm talking about women entrepreneurs in agriculture, and it is so difficult to. One is to establish their decision-making power in the family, because the land belongs to the mostly to the men, or it is an ancestral land, so they don't have really control over the income increase. And most of us who are working with the women entrepreneurs in the agri business sector, so it becomes really difficult to one is definitely their decision making in the asset, control over the asset or the income increase. And then the last part comes is the how do you measure the income increase within the families, because they are not going to the mandis, they are not going to the market. They maybe if you give them a lot of capacity building, and if they are really confident enough, they have established there's some say in the type of crops which should be grown, or the kind of seeds which you can procure, or some amount of land. We have seen in Rajasthan and in MP we are working. So we see that a part of land is being allocated to women also to grow vegetables, sell those vegetables in whatever rate it is possible, and then you can take that income and use it for your own purpose. So that is the last thing which we say that yes, the project was successful, at least the women is having some control. So how do you deal with these kind of challenges, women in agriculture?
Yeah. You would like to first? So you raised a valid point, and you also mentioned one of the solutions. So kitchen gardening, nutri gardening, that is, in fact, we have identified as one of the strongest tool, wherein the agriculture department trains mostly male only farmers. Women farmers, they are 70%, they spend 70% of their time, and 70% of the agriculture level force is women. So nobody is skilling them, very rarely. And in the area that we were working, even there was limited outreach in that. So we have taken this Nutri Garden, kitchen gardening as a tool to build the skill of women farmers, wherein they at a single point of time, over a small plot, they are able to grow 12 crops, 12 different varieties of vegetables, so 12 crops. So over a period of 1 or 2 cycles, they get trained on the packaging practices, which even if they go to the field and they work, then they can identify the pest or the disease, or how to manage them and how to manage naturally. We have seen that women, if they have understood the challenges of chemical fertilizers and pesticides, even they put it to their family that yes, we are preparing vermicompost, vermiwash, and then other bio solutions, we can use it. So that is one. Second, we talked about the green agripreneurs. So in fact, we also worked with lots of local women from the same village, and they, within a period of 3 months time, they have taken up this vermicompost, vermiwash. They are collecting it from the members who have access, and then they are selling it within the community. And another one aesthetic value that we have been able to add, and which has helped them improve their pride, is just a jacket of 500 rupees. So say suppose many companies come with t-shirts, many company come with dresses, then t-shirt maybe 1 or 2 you will give, but a small half jacket, and the color is green, and whenever that greenpreneur lady is going in the village, she is now getting identified as the GP Didi. So that's helping bring their pride. So there's few of the mechanisms that we have adopted to improve the participation of women farmers, women green entrepreneurs, in the program.
Yeah, so just to answer your question, I think basically we all know women's basically they are involved in basically the labor works like for the sowing, harvesting, interculture operations, and they have little or no say in the decision making, what to buy, where to sell. One of the major reasons they don't have exposure and they don't have a knowledge. What husband sees कि मैं बाजार में जाता हूँ, मुझे पता है, मैं लोगों से मिलता हूँ, I know everything, तुम घर में रहती हो, तुमको पता नहीं है. But with this entrepreneurship model and what I can say, in Bihar we work with Jivika. Still working with Jivika, and we have created some 4,000 agri entrepreneur, and about 90% are women entrepreneurs. These are basically SHG cluster ladies. We have trained them as agri entrepreneur, and once they know about the technical know-how, and then in their SHG meetings, then they discuss the same things. So usually when they go in their house, they discuss with their husbands why you are buying this. If that like paddy, if paddy, what is the duration? कितने दिन का है? फिर hybrid क्यों लगाना है? Research क्यों नहीं लगाना है? So even husband knows कि she knows something. When the ladies know something about the things, they share with the husband. They will get the exposure. Then they will play a role in the decision making as well, and that we have seen. And even for the entrepreneur, I can share an example. There were ladies, those who are earlier not ready to come out. कि मैं कैसे कर सकती हूँ, मैंने कभी बाहर नहीं आया. That input shop, still that social taboo is there कि कोई बुजुर्ग आ रहा है उसके सामने आप नहीं जा सकते हैं. तो इनपुट का अगर काम करना, how I can open a shop, why the people will come to me. But initially it's a struggle. But once they came out, then even the elders of the villages, they are coming and they are sharing the examples. They are sharing, okay, this is the problem and this is the remedy that you have to do. So for everything, initially there is a challenge. But once you start it, then we can overcome the challenges, and that we have seen in the geographies. So once they know, then ultimately they will make more say in the decision makings.
ठीक है, तो समय को देखते हुए अब हम एक और क्वेश्चन ले सकते हैं. सो एनीबडी, यस प्लीज. ओह, अब 3 हो गए, तो आप थोड़ा सा ब्रीफ रखेंगे तो हम तीनों से सुन लेंगे.
Okay.
ऐसा करिए, all 3 of you ask a question and then we can respond.
Okay, so this is Joseph from Hand in Hand India. See, you are discussing about the vermicompost. Is it really cost effective when you are doing in your agriculture, rural agriculture? Because mostly the urban areas, the people are using vermicompost for kitchen garden or rooftop garden kind of things. But when we are suggesting the rural agriculture, whether the vermicompost is cost effective or not.
Thanks. यहाँ से एक हाथ रख.
Yeah.
And then I'll come to you. अच्छा, you got the mic.
Can I ask? Okay. Well, my question to Pankaj especially, because when we talk about the woman entrepreneurship, I think making them entrepreneur is required a certain kind of acumen. There are two things. One is like making women entrepreneurship by force, or making women who are actually willing to become a businessman. So how do you address this thing?
जी, मेरा प्रश्न तो नहीं था, लेकिन दीदी ने जैसे प्रश्न किया हुआ था कि वो जो डिसीजन मेकिंग का है और महिला वो नहीं ले पाती है, तो उस पर और कैसे इंटरप्रेन्योर में वो आए, क्योंकि कृषि क्षेत्र में अधिकांश वो मजदूर स्तर की बहनें हैं. तो हमने कुछ ऐसे मॉडल तैयार किए हैं ईस्टर्न यूपी में, बर्फा प्रोग्रेस के तहत ही है. और उसमें ऐसा हुआ है कि जैसे आशा देवी हुआ, तो 2017 में उन्होंने अपना वर्मी कंपोस्ट प्रोडक्शन यूनिट लगाया और उनका कुछ बिक्री होना शुरू हुआ. किसी ने केचुआ उठा लिया, तो उन्होंने फिर उसके लिए उन्होंने सीसीटीवी कैमरा लगाया और अमेज़न पे उन्होंने काफ़ी अपना वो बेचा, और अभी वो अच्छे तरह से बेच भी रही हैं. और उनका बच्चा जो प्राइमरी स्कूल में पढ़ता था वो कॉन्वेंट में पढ़ रहा है, और पूरा परिवार उनकी बातों को सुनता है. जो वो कहेंगी उनके हस्बैंड भी सुनते हैं. ऐसे बहुत सारे उदाहरण है. प्रज्ञा देवी को भी इस तरह से किया गया कि थैंक यू.
और बताएंगे, समय थोड़ा आप ब्रीफली ये हैंड इन हैंड से जो उन्होंने पूछा है उसके बाद वेरी ब्रीफ रिस्पॉन्सेस प्लीज.
जी. सो मैं आपकी वर्मी कंपोस्ट की क्वेश्चन को टेकअप करना चाहूँगा. Okay, sorry. So later I saw many didis. So there is a dilemma always. If I speak in English, then they won't be able to understand. But for particularly for your question, yes. So vermicompost, many people think that this is not cost effective. However, if the farmer produces it at their own field, then there is a big change. Then, say for an example like Jaipur, which is Jaipur rural, which is outskirt of the city, where water is a scarcity, then their farmers are very much willing to adopt, even if it's a little bit of extra effort. So it is worth. We can discuss offline when. Yeah, sorry for the limitation of time. Yeah.
Very brief, please.
Yeah, just to give you answer to the question, I think you can't make all women as an entrepreneur because अब सब entrepreneur बन जाएंगे तो खरीदने वाला भी कोई होना चाहिए. तो in our system we have a very stringent screening and selection process. As I said ना, कि you can't take very ambitious candidate as an entrepreneur. In a similar way, we have a stringent where we basically meet them. There are few questions which are asked, few questions there to answer, and based on that we'll make a selection. So that is the criteria that we'll keep for selecting the entrepreneurs.
Yeah, so just responding to that point, how do we bring in women? Here we are talking of including. So who do we want to include? Because the ones who have been excluded. So people who have been excluded for so long, historically also, it takes time. It is not simple and easy because they have not got exposure, skills, accesses, all those things are there. But once we start, and which is where I was mentioning the formation of collectives, our experience has been you don't immediately start with the business enterprise point of view. You start mobilizing the community, form their collectives, which is where these ideas come up. And also the potential leadership emerges from this collectivization process. And then you take them from there. So which is why we call it also solidarity economies. So how do you build solidarities within the community, building the agency of the individual women first, working with their families as well as with the larger communities. Because this is when only you will be able to address it through a systems based approach. It can't be just isolated approach of creating the enterprise. It has to be a systems based approach.
Thanks a lot. I think Kanika is trying to make a point, very brief, and then we close.
Yeah. I feel like the conversation is always heating up when it's time to finish because I want you to flip the question. I think that's the challenge. Why are we assuming we have to create entrepreneurs out of women? I think women are very entrepreneurial. And so the question we have to ask ourselves is how are we going to help them internalize that? Perhaps they don't understand their own power. You know, that's the difference. Are you going to empower women or are you going to enable them to empower themselves? So
Yes.
that's the distinction we have to make.
Chalo.
Who are we to select?
Okay. Thanks a lot. It's been a very interesting session. Thanks a lot for your participation and presence here. We can close it, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. We would like to present a small token of our appreciation and thanks to the esteemed panelists of this session. We thank Ms. Kanika Verma, the esteemed panelists, Mr. Shubhendu Das, Ms. Deepali Sharma, Mr. Pankaj Shukla, Mr. Anuj Srivastava, and of course, Ms. Ranu Bogle, the esteemed moderator of this session. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are once again breaking away. Gentle request, please do remember to carry all of your belongings with you because we are once again closing and merging the two halls. Please do not leave anything behind because the hall arrangements have to be made, the chairs will have to be shifted. So please do make sure that you're carrying everything with you. Thank you and see you after the break. We take a break for 15 minutes.